A raven breaks the silence. Its wings cut through the gray dawn as it circles above a ruin that once pulsed with life. Below, the castle lies open to the sky, its broken walls like ribs of a long-dead beast. The stone breathes dampness. The moss drinks from cracks where once banners hung. Dust rises in the stillness, caught in a pale shaft of light that falls through an archway now half collapsed. It is here the story waits, clinging to mortar and earth, whispering in the air like a secret too heavy to remain buried. The voice of the wind carries faint echoes, as though footsteps move still across the uneven stones. The scrape of boots, the rattle of chainmail, the low hum of a hymn before battle. But no men remain. Only shadows and the residue of memory carved into walls once lit by torchlight. A sentinel leans against the battlements in imagination, his hands rough, his breath clouded with cold, his gaze fixed on the horizon that once promised both invasion and salvation. The iron key he carried, now rusting in the weeds, was his bond of duty, the weight of loyalty pressing against his hip. He is gone, but his silence endures, thick as fog. A raven again croaks, and the sound pierces like a warning bell. How many prayers rose from this place? How many voices chanted beneath these beams before time splintered them? Candle smoke once curled in golden spirals, staining frescoes with soot. The sweetness of mead and honey drifted in feasts where laughter rang, and fingers tore roasted meat from bone. A noblewoman's veil fluttered near the fire, perfumed faintly with lavender, brushing her cheek as she leaned close to whisper counsel. These scents, these gestures, have thinned into nothing. Only damp stone and mold remain. Yet, in the memory of the ruin, they endure. Every stone speaks of exile. This was not merely a castle abandoned by war or famine, but a sanctuary exiled from itself. The people fled, yet the walls stayed, carrying the burden of betrayal and defeat. Each carved crest upon the lintel, each notch in the stair, is a testimony. They whisper of oaths sworn beneath banners now eaten by moths, of hands clasped in secret treaties, of knives drawn in sudden treachery. The ruin is not mute. It holds the weight of broken promises like a cathedral holds incense, lingering, invisible, almost unbearable. The chill deepens as the vision sharpens. A chamber door hangs crooked, its wood gray and splintered, a spider's web glistening where once a lock forbade entry. Passing through is like crossing a threshold between centuries. Here the great hearth yawns empty, filled only with the skeleton of ash. A wooden chair, half rotted, leans as though waiting for the Lord who never returned. On the flagstones, a goblet lies crushed, its metal twisted, its rim darkened with ancient wine. One can almost hear the goblet fall, shattering laughter into fear, spilling abundance into despair. This hall, once heart of revelry, has become a grave for memory. And still there is a tenderness in the decay, as if the walls themselves remember affection, the scrape of a lute string in a minstrel's hands, the soft tread of a child running across the hall, chasing a wooden toy, the echo of prayer drifting from the chapel above where bells once rang in tones that shook the very marrow of stone. That tenderness aches like a scar, the wound of time that bleeds quietly but never heals. To walk here is to feel the weight of centuries press against the chest, to breathe not only damp air, but the sorrow of lives lost in silence. The ruin is more than wreckage. It is a veil, drawn back to show us the fragility of power and the endurance of memory. Through its cracks, we glimpse the fragility of crowns, the vanity of feast, the futility of walls against hunger and plague. A castle raised to guard and protect is now no shield, only a skeleton gnawed by rain. And yet, in its abandonment, it has become something else, a witness. It witnesses not victory, but the inevitability of loss. It shows us how the mighty fall, how the proud are silenced, how the stones themselves outlive flesh. The raven returns, alighting upon the battlement. Its talons scrape the stone as it tilts its head, black eyes reflecting only the emptiness below. It is as though the bird has stood guard since the gates fell, a sentinel over secrets never spoken. The wind rises, and with it a sound, low, mournful, like the sigh of the castle itself. Is it grief or warning? The ruin seems to draw us inward, toward its deepest chambers where the air thickens with something unspoken. The threshold is here, a moment where silence dares to break. The door gapes, shadows gather, and beyond, the secret waits. Perhaps it is carved in stone beneath layers of moss. Perhaps it lies in the bones of those who fell, hidden beneath the floor. Perhaps it lingers in the chapel's dark recesses, in the echo of hymns that once shielded the fearful. Whatever it is, it calls us. It beckons the wanderer further into darkness, promising revelation. The ruin will not remain silent forever. And so we pass through. The hall behind us fades into mist, the raven's cry swallowed by wind. Ahead, a stair descends into shadow, carved in stone slick with centuries of rain. The ruin has offered its threshold, its first whisper. But what lies below, what truth lies buried in its deepest heart, is where the next chapter will draw us. Into the secret places where castles remember what men sought to forget. Rain falls in silence, a fine mist that slants through the broken teeth of battlements. Each droplet strikes stone with a hollow patience, weaving music into the ruin. The walls drink deeply, moss swelling, wood blackening where beams once held weight. It is not a storm, but a steady gray weeping, as though the heavens themselves mourn what lies below. Through the shattered ribs of a chapel window, streaks of water trail across fragments of saints whose eyes have long since faded, their halos chipped away by centuries of neglect. Inside, the air tastes of rust and incense long gone cold. Beneath our feet, the dust conceals forgotten relics, shards of chalices, their silver skin darkened with tarnish, the delicate edge of a monstrance glimmering faintly before disappearing again into shadow. Each fragment speaks of devotion severed, faith interrupted in mid-breath. We are not in a ruin alone, but in the hushed aftermath of belief itself, still clinging to stone though flesh has fled. A veil hangs in imagination, pale linen embroidered by patient hands, once perfumed with rosemary and worn by a woman cloistered for life. Her voice, soft in chant, still lingers as though caught in the porous walls. Yet the veil, abandoned, grew heavy with damp until it collapsed upon the pew, its stitches unraveling thread by thread. It rests now like a shroud, an emblem of faith abandoned, the devotion of its maker sinking into silence. She had prayed for peace, and yet war crept across these stones. War that tore through vows as easily as fabric, scattering her sisters into exile. The pew beneath her veil is scarred by fire, the wood split, its scent sharp with old smoke. Listen, and one hears the faint drip of water from a cracked roof beam, each drop falling in cadence with a prayer unsaid. Imagine the nun who lingered here when the doors were breached, clutching her rosary until the cord cut into her palm. "Forgive us," she might have whispered, though no answer came, only the sound of iron and the shouts of men. She fled, or perhaps she remained, her fate hidden in the shadows that still cling to this hall. The ruin does not reveal, but it remembers. The stone altar bears witness more than any tale. Once smooth, it now crumbles at the edges, yet still it holds the stub of a candle frozen in its last breath of flame. Wax pooled like tears along the carved surface, hardened into rivulets that gleam faintly in the dim light. This candle is not merely an object. It is a soul, a fragile ember that endures though the hand that lit it is gone. That hand might have trembled, struck by doubt, struck by hunger, yet still it reached for the flame, unwilling to surrender to the dark. This chapel was more than a place of prayer. It was a fortress of spirit, walls singing with voices that sought to turn back plague, famine, and sword. To walk here now is to hear not silence, but the echo of hymns woven into the very stones. The echo resists death. It clings stubbornly, a memory that cannot be erased even as frescoes peel and beams collapse. The ruin is not absence, it is resistance, a testament to the endurance of faith even in its abandonment. And yet, there is guilt in the air. It clings like incense, burned too long, bitter and sharp. Was devotion enough? Did their prayers protect, or did they crumble as easily as mortar in the rain? The abandoned veil, the broken chalice, the scarred pew, they accuse as much as they mourn. They speak of vows broken, of sanctity dissolved in blood and betrayal. Faith here is not triumphant. It is wounded, gasping, bleeding into the soil. But in its wounding, there is beauty. The candle's stub remains. The fragments of fresco still glow faintly, color clinging despite centuries of weather. The silver of the chalice still shines in secret places, hidden from light, yet unwilling to vanish. Faith endures not in fullness, but in fragments. And those fragments call to us now, drawing us deeper into the secret life of the ruin. Outside, the rain intensifies, striking the stones in a chorus that sounds almost like bells. Bells that once rang to call the faithful, now replaced by water's song. It is as though the sky itself has taken up the toll, carrying the voices of the departed where no priest remains. The ruin becomes a cathedral of rain, every drop a requiem, every rivulet a litany. We walk through it in reverence, head bowed, as though entering a liturgy written not by men, but by time itself. A shadow gathers near the far wall. There, beneath layers of fallen plaster, a faint outline emerges, the curve of a door, long sealed. Its wood has decayed, but the frame endures, half hidden by rubble. Beyond it lies a passage deeper still, perhaps once a sacristy, perhaps a chamber where relics were kept safe, perhaps where the nun herself fled when the swords came. The ruin keeps its secret, offering only this threshold, this dark invitation. The candle stub flickers in the imagination, though no flame burns. Its light stretches toward that hidden door, beckoning us onward. It is not only curiosity that pulls us, but duty. The duty to bear witness, to follow where memory leads, to honor what was left behind. The ruin does not release its story easily. It requires descent. It requires surrender. So we pause, one final moment in the chapel, breathing its damp air, letting the scent of stone and smoke settle into our lungs. The rain continues, relentless, like a psalm without end. The veil clings to the pew, the chalice lies in pieces, the fresco fades. And yet the candle waits, its flame imagined, its promise unbroken. We step toward the sealed door, its outline sharp against the gloom. Our hand grazes the crumbling wall, dust clinging like ash to the skin. The ruin has spoken in fragments, in whispers, in symbols of devotion shattered. But beyond that door lies something deeper, something guarded by silence and shadow. The candle leads us there. Its fragile light becomes our guide. The ruin breathes, and the story descends. What waits beyond, relic or betrayal, sanctity or curse, is the thread that will draw us into the next chapter, where the secrets of faith and ruin entwine in darkness. A hollow breath of wind sighs through the broken face of sandstone, curling into the cavernous dark like a whispered secret. Dust glimmers where the light intrudes, tiny stars suspended in the silence of ages. These are no grand battlements, no gilded halls, only rough walls carved by hands weary of exile. This place is not the dream of architects, but the refuge of necessity, a dwelling cut from the living rock. It is here, beneath the earth, that memory has hidden its most fragile treasure, the solitude of a king stripped of his crown. The walls do not rise in splendor. They cling, close and humble, damp with centuries of breath and prayer. One chamber opens like a throat, scarred with the marks of chisels that dug both sanctuary and prison. Its air is cool, sharp with the scent of chalk and the faint mustiness of straw rotted to dust. Against the far corner lies a pallet, rough reeds bound together once, now only a shadow pressed into stone. The ghost of a man lingers there, his spine curled against the cold, his dreams wandering to halls he would never see again. We can hear him still, the rasp of his quill scratching against parchment, letters bending into psalms and laments, the drip of water from the cave's ceiling into a clay cup placed carefully beneath, the low hum of prayer when loneliness cut deepest, echoing against walls that gave no reply. Each sound is small, almost nothing. And yet, in exile, these small sounds were his kingdom. They bound him to the world he lost, to the God he clung to the humanity he refused to relinquish. On one wall, a faint cross remains, etched by fingers until the grooves wore skin away. It is not art but devotion, scratched again and again in the dark. At its base lies a pile of stones, perhaps once an altar. There he would have knelt, the king without throne, the saint without cathedral, pressing his forehead to the cold surface until the bone itself ached. The silence of the cave became his congregation. His breath became his hymn. And yet solitude was no simple peace. It was hunger gnawing at the belly, lips cracked from fasting, eyes burning in darkness. The cave was both womb and tomb, a place of rebirth, a place of slow death. Outside, kingdoms fought, banners rose and fell, names were shouted in battle and forgotten. Inside, one man kept vigil, unseen, his existence erased from chronicles, yet inscribed on stone. Every scratch, every drop, every whispered prayer still resonates, carried forward by the ruin itself. The imagination sees him on a winter night, the cave mouth crusted with frost, the air sharp enough to sting the lungs. He clutches his cloak close, patched wool stiff with damp, his fingers raw and bleeding from carving wood for a simple cross. He speaks aloud, not to men but to silence. "I was a king once." The words echo, mocking and hollow, until he bows his head and adds, "I am nothing but a servant now." And in that surrender, perhaps, he found his truest crown. There is another chamber, narrower, its entrance nearly lost in shadow. To reach it is to stoop low, scraping shoulders against stone, until one enters what might once have been a chapel. The faint outline of an arch remains in the rock, its curve smoothed by hands that traced it in reverence. At the far end, a shallow niche shelters a sigil drawn in chalk. The lines are faint, blurred by damp, yet they persist, an emblem of faith carved into silence. This place was no accident. It was a sanctuary of the spirit, hidden from enemies, hidden even from history. Imagine the candlelight trembling here, its flame bending in drafts that hiss through unseen cracks. The smell of tallow thick in the air, the smoke coiling upward to stain the ceiling. The Hermit King kneels, shadow doubling his form upon the wall. His prayer is not triumph but lament, for the people he failed, the crown he lost, the sins he cannot cleanse. The ruin carries his voice still, faint but unyielding, as though the very stone has absorbed the sorrow of his exile. Above, the world carried on. Plague and famine swept through villages. Soldiers marched beneath banners now rotted in the ground. Castles rose in defiance of time only to crumble. Yet down here, in the belly of stone, one man endured in silence. His survival was not recorded in chronicles, not sung by minstrels, not carved into heraldry. It was carved only here, into the rock itself, into grooves and scratches and shadows that outlast parchment and power. The ruin does not honor kings in their glory. It remembers them in their solitude, in the raw truth of abandonment. What does it mean for a king to be forgotten? To be stripped of his voice, his court, his crown, until only silence remains? Perhaps it means everything else was illusion. Perhaps it means the true kingdom is not of banners and castles, but of endurance and faith carved into stone. In this exile, he was not king but man, not ruler but servant, not remembered but eternal. The wind returns, curling through the cave mouth, carrying with it the smell of rain and earth. It sounds like a sigh, like a prayer finished but never answered. Dust lifts, shimmering briefly before settling again, as though spirits stir in the gloom. The chambers breathe with memory, with devotion, with sorrow. They are not empty. They are full, of presence, of weight, of history pressing from the walls themselves. A faint passage lingers at the edge of shadow, its purpose uncertain. Was it a secret escape, or a burial niche, or a path to deeper sanctity? It yawns like a mouth, black and waiting. The ruin offers no answer, only the invitation. To follow is to descend further into silence, to step deeper into memory's heart. The Hermit King fades into darkness, his story unfinished, urging us to pursue what he left behind. The chamber grows still once more. The cross on the wall glimmers faintly in the dim light. The sigil in chalk whispers of devotion. The palette of reeds lingers with sorrow. But the passage beckons. Beyond it lies the deeper truth, the secret sealed in darkness, waiting for hands bold enough to trace it. And so we turn, lantern trembling, heart heavy, breath clouding in the cold. The ruin has given us exile and solitude, devotion and despair, but it has not yet given its deepest secret. That lies further still, beyond the threshold, where silence thickens into mystery. The story continues, and the ruin itself leads us down. The first sound is not footsteps, but the echo of iron striking stone. Pickaxes, lanterns, and the hiss of disturbed dust. A shaft opens in the ground, and for the first time in centuries, breath and light descend into darkness. What lies beneath is no mere cellar nor forgotten vault. It is a labyrinth where silence once cloaked the vows of the most feared and revered knights of the Middle Ages. Beneath the ruined stones of Acre, beneath centuries of rubble and earth, the underworld of the Knights Templar breathes again. The air is heavy, thick with the taste of limestone dust and the tang of smoke from torches. Each step down the passage stirs fragments of an age when faith and war were bound as one. The walls close in, sweating with damp, their surfaces carved with faint lines that catch the torchlight. A cross, a sword, a symbol of Jerusalem etched by hands that no longer exist. The stone hums with memory, a subterranean hymn that once guided the knights in their secret councils. The corridor leads into a chamber where the ceiling rises in a vault, its span broader than the reach of a torch. Shadows crawl upward, bending into arches that curve like the ribs of some buried beast. The floor beneath crunches with fragments of pottery, shards of forgotten feasts consumed before riders rode out to war. Here, In the half-light, one can almost hear the scrape of chairs, the rustle of cloaks, the clang of armored gauntlets striking the table in oath. Men who bore both sword and scripture gathered here, their lives tethered to a vow of obedience and to a secret that weighed heavier than steel. The Templars lived between two worlds: monks in prayer, soldiers in blood, poverty on parchment, but riches hidden in vaults. Their fortress beneath the earth was no accident. It was designed for silence, secrecy, survival. A tunnel runs narrow and low, a passage for escape when the city above was burning. It exhales cold air still, a draft that brushes the skin like the breath of those who fled through it. Imagine their panic. The clatter of armor muffled by urgency, the thud of boots in the dark, the whispered prayers as they slipped into the unknown. Against the wall rests the broken remnant of a chair. Its wood has blackened with age, but its form still carries authority. Here, perhaps, a commander once sat, his eyes fixed on maps spread beneath flickering candlelight. Around him, his brothers murmured of crusades, of kings who demanded their aid, of secrets entrusted to them alone. Their words seeped into stone. Their shadows still cling to these walls. Their silence now is not absence, but a presence so heavy it fills the lungs. The banner that once hung here has rotted away, but its ghost lingers. Imagine crimson fabric faded, the sigil of the cross stark against dim light. Its folds smelled of sweat and incense, of campfire smoke and sea voyages. To stand beneath it was to kneel beneath a cause greater than any king. To abandon it was unthinkable. And yet, centuries later, the banner lies buried, its threads dissolved into dust. What remains is the weight of its presence, pressing on the ruin like a memory that refuses to die. Listen closely, and one hears not only silence but faint echoes. The murmur of prayers in Latin, the clash of swords rehearsed in drill, the groan of men confessing sins they feared would follow them into death. These chambers are not mute. They are a chorus of devotion and dread. Each wall holds the friction of contradictions: faith and blood, charity and power, humility and ambition. The Templars carried these contradictions like armor, polished bright above ground, but here, in the underground, their truth seeps out. In the corner of one chamber, a shield rests, its iron rim corroded, its wooden core gnawed by centuries of damp. It is no longer weapon nor defense, only relic, yet it leans against the wall like a sentinel unwilling to fall. Its presence is symbolic. Even in ruin, the Templars keep watch. Even in abandonment, their oath persists. The tunnels stretch further, twisting into dark where the torchlight falters. Some collapse into rubble, others lead into chambers whose purpose is lost to time. Were they armories, stockpiles, sanctuaries for relics? Or were they prisons, places where confessions were drawn in silence, where loyalty was tested by fire and fear? The ruin will not say. It gives only fragments. A carved cross here, a stone bench there, the lingering cold of air that has not moved in centuries. And yet, in this labyrinth, one feels a presence stronger than stone. The Templars were accused of heresy, of secret rites whispered in chambers such as these. Some say they denied Christ, spat upon the cross, worshipped false idols in the dark. Others claim they preserved holy truths too dangerous for kings and popes to hear. Whatever the reality, the chambers seem to breathe accusation and defense all at once, as though the walls themselves are torn between condemnation and reverence. The underworld of the Templars is not simply ruin. It is judgment suspended in time. It is devotion carved into rock, unanswered questions echoing through corridors where no voice now speaks. Each step deeper is a step into ambiguity, into shadows where loyalty and betrayal blur. At last, the passage narrows, funneling into darkness, so complete it seems to swallow breath itself. The torch sputters, its flame shrinking, its smoke curling like incense. Ahead lies a tunnel, long and straight, disappearing into night. Perhaps it was an escape route leading toward the sea. Perhaps it was a grave corridor, meant to seal away secrets with the dead. It exhales coldness, thick and unyielding, as though it guards what no one is meant to see. We linger at the threshold. Behind us lie the chambers of prayer and command, the echoes of vows whispered in secrecy. Before us lies the void, the unanswered truth that history itself could not hold. Do we step forward, or do we honor the silence left behind? The ruin makes its choice for us. The torch gutters, then steadies, casting its fragile light into the tunnel. It beckons us forward, into the unseen, into the deeper mystery of men who were both saints and sinners. The underworld does not release its secrets easily, but it invites us to descend, and so we move, one step, then another, the darkness thickening around us, the silence pressing heavier, the shield at our back, the banner dissolved, the prayers lingering in the stone. Ahead, the story waits, tangled in secrecy, waiting to reveal itself in the deeper chambers of ruin. The hall greets us not with welcome, but with absence. Its air is stale, heavy with the sour tang of mold and the faint sweetness of rot. The silence is unnatural, the sort that presses upon the skin until it feels like weight. Once, this space roared with song, the crash of goblets against oak, the laughter of lords and ladies. Now, straw clings damp to the flagstones, broken plates lie half buried in dirt, and goblets overturned glimmer faintly in the dim light, their rims crusted with centuries of corrosion. In the corner, the blackened heel of bread lies fossilized, sharp as bone. It crumbles under the faintest touch, a relic of a feast abandoned too soon. Its smell has long since soured into the stone itself, a ghost of hunger preserved in the walls. Where spits once turned fat geese over open flames, only an iron hook remains, rusted through, sagging like the bowed head of a defeated knight. The memory of roasting flesh lingers in imagination, skin blistering, juices crackling into fire. But here no warmth survives, only the bitterness of what was lost. The great hearth gapes, hollow and cold. Ash piles long settled lie like graves, their layers built from years of unremembered fires. The walls above are smudged with soot, black veins climbing toward a ceiling where timbers now sag beneath their own decay. A fallen beam lies in the center of the hall, charred on one end, gnawed by rot on the other. It is a carcass of wood, a reminder that even the bones of feasting crumble when the hand of time presses too long. And yet, listen, beyond the silence, the echo of revelry stirs. The scrape of benches dragged across stone, the metallic ring of knives upon trenchers, the faint chorus of a drinking song, the rhythm marked by the stamping of boots. It hovers here still, not fully gone, as though the ruin itself cannot forget. The hall clings to joy even as it decays into despair. In the mind's eye, the lady of the castle moves through the smoke of the hearth, her gown brushing against the rushes strewn upon the floor. Her hands are busy, turning meat, pouring wine, beckoning musicians to play. She carries her burdens quietly, duty to her house, fear of attack, the weight of children watching her with wide eyes. When the hall fell silent, did she flee? Did she extinguish the fire herself, or was she torn away as it died behind her? The pewter pitcher she once held lies dented in the shadows, its lip cracked as if struck in haste. Her presence lingers in its brokenness, a ghostly gesture reaching through ruin. The feast was not merely sustenance. It was the lifeblood of power, the theater of loyalty. Every plate of bread, every joint of mutton, every poured cup was a symbol of generosity, of a lord's strength displayed for those sworn to him. To abandon such a table was to abandon authority itself. The silence here is not just hunger, it is betrayal. The rushes rot not because time demanded it, but because fear drove them away. The laughter curdled into cries, the goblets fell because hands were forced to flee. Near the dais lies the remnant of a chandelier. Its iron frame has collapsed, twisted like a cage. Fragments of crystal scatter the floor like frozen tears, dulled by centuries of dust. Once, these shards caught the golden light of candles, refracting fire into 100 brilliant stars above the feast. Now, they lie cold, catching only the pale gray of daylight slipping through broken shutters. The chandelier tells the hall's story better than any chronicle. What was splendor is now sorrow. What was opulence is now ruin. Its fall is a silent scream, echoing through time. And still, the hall breathes. The air shivers as if the voices remain, rising in song, falling in argument, surging in cheer. But beneath those echoes lingers another sound. The low rumble of boots outside the walls, the crash of a gate giving way, the rush of fear that swallowed laughter mid-breath. The feast ended not in merriment, but in flight. Plates overturned, wine spilled, meat left half-eaten. The hall became a battlefield of absence, every overturned goblet a monument to terror. The ruin holds its secrets close. Was it famine that silenced the tables, or the iron fist of war? Did plague carry away its people, leaving bread to rot in place? The evidence lies not in chronicles, but in fragments. Bread blackened, pewter dented, chandelier shattered. These are the testimonies of objects, and they whisper louder than words. Step deeper into the hall. The rushes crackle underfoot, brittle as parchment. The light from above shifts, brushing across the cracked stone of the dais where the Lord once presided. His chair is gone, but the indentations remain, carved into the floor by centuries of weight. It is as though the stone remembers him even when history forgot. He was the center of this place, the axis upon which the feast turned. And now, even he is gone, leaving only the scars of presence. The hall does not close its story with silence. It offers a vision, the chandelier collapsing, its weight crashing into the table, scattering bread, wine, and laughter into dust. That moment, frozen in the imagination, is the heart of the ruin. The chandelier's fall is both an ending and a symbol. The weight of glory became the ruin of memory. And in that image, the hall invites us onward. Beyond the doors lie corridors darkened with mold, stairways crumbling into shadow. The feast is over, but the story of abandonment stretches further into the ruin. What waits in those passages? A chapel, a chamber, a crypt, will carry us deeper still into the sorrow of a world where power and splendor could vanish in an instant. The hall exhales its memory one last time. The bread remains black, the pewter cracked, the chandelier shattered. The echoes of laughter fade into silence. And at the edge of shadow, the ruin whispers of darker secrets that lie beyond the feasting hall, where silence is not only absence, but burial. The first sound is water, a steady drop, 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 falling into blackness below the ruin. Each impact echoes like a heartbeat in the earth, patient, unending, a rhythm older than the walls above. We have descended beneath the hall, beneath the courtyards and battlements, into the silent throat of the castle itself. The air is colder here, sharp with damp, thick with the breath of mold and moss. The stone sweats, slick beneath the fingertips, its pores drinking centuries of rain. Once, this place was moat and bulwark, filled with water drawn to repel invaders. Now it is a hushed cistern, a hollow mirror, holding the reflection of all that drowned above. The air tastes of iron, rust mingling with the bitter tang of algae. Shadows cling tightly here, broken only by the dim glow of torchlight trembling upon the slick walls. The silence is alive, pierced only by that eternal dripping. Water whispering the memory of vigilance, of fear, of watchmen who once stood above with eyes straining toward the horizon. Beneath the surface of the water floats a shape, the curve of an iron key, its body green-black with centuries of rust. It turns slowly, disturbed by the smallest ripple, as though refusing to settle. Once, it fit the lock of the drawbridge, the gate that determined life or death. To hold it was to hold trust, the fragile hinge upon which a castle's fate could swing. Now it drifts unclaimed, stripped of authority, sinking deeper into silence. The key is more than iron. It is memory. It is duty undone, loyalty submerged. Above, imagine the sentinel who once bore it. His boots sunk in the mud of the outer yard, his cloak heavy with rain, his hand trembling as he lowered the drawbridge. The chains groaned, dripping water into the moat, their sound a dirge for those waiting to enter. His oath weighed heavier than his sword. Each time the gate fell, it was a gamble, salvation for the faithful, or ruin invited by the enemy, disguised as ally. That weight pressed against his chest, against his knights, until it pressed him into the soil itself. The ruin does not speak his name, but the dripping water is his heartbeat, echoing still. The walls here are carved with faint grooves, not decorative but functional. The marks of men who maintained the moat, who carried buckets of lime and pitch to strengthen its belly. Their labor lingers in the scratches, their sweat absorbed into stone. They lived in silence, their voices erased, their hands remembered only by these scars. Each groove is a testimony, a prayer without words, a sacrifice unacknowledged. The ruin preserves them as surely as scripture. And yet this place was never only defense. In times of famine, its water grew stagnant, thick with weeds, sour to the tongue but swallowed nonetheless by lips cracked with thirst. The people of the castle leaned over its edge, lowering buckets, lifting the taste of desperation in every gulp. To drink here was to taste decay, yet it was life. The ruin remembers their hunger, their trembling hands clutching at cords, their prayers whispered as they lowered buckets into shadow. The moat became a mirror of fate. In war, it reflected fire from flaming arrows, its surface writhing in orange. In plague, it mirrored the pale faces of those too weak to fetch water, their eyes hollow with fever. In peace, it shimmered with torchlight and the glow of festivals, banners dancing above in reflection. And now, it reflects nothing but darkness, its surface broken only by that single key drifting down, vanishing inch by inch into the black. We crouch at the edge, hearing the hollow echo of drops striking water. Each drop is a tolling bell, a reminder that vigilance once mattered here, that lives once hung on the depth of this moat. The air thickens with damp, the smell of rot clinging to the lungs, the torch sputtering against the cold draft rising from below. It is as though the moat itself breathes, inhaling memory, exhaling silence. There is movement in the water's surface, not fish, not beast, but the shifting reflection of the ruin above. Broken towers bend and ripple, their jagged outlines trembling in the black pool. The moat has become the ruin's soul, holding in its dark mirror the broken image of what once stood proud. The reflection is not complete, not whole. It is fractured, trembling, dissolving with each ripple. Just as the castle itself has dissolved into ruin, so too its image drowns beneath the water's surface. The sentinel's duty, the laborer's sweat, the desperate thirst of plague years, all of it lies here, beneath us, submerged but not erased. The water whispers, but it does not release its secrets. It swallows keys, chains, perhaps bones, holding them in silence. The moat is both grave and witness. Its depths guard what should not be forgotten. The torchlight flickers, and the water glows faintly in amber waves. The iron key sinks further, twisting one final time before vanishing into shadow. Its disappearance is symbolic. Authority gone, duty dissolved, the past slipping beyond reach. Yet its absence speaks louder than its presence. The ruin does not want us to hold it. It wants us to understand what it meant. The silence deepens, pressing against the ears until it roars. The dripping grows louder, as though time itself is beating here, marking each second with unrelenting precision. The moat becomes not only memory but clock, a reminder that vigilance is always temporary, that walls fall, that gates fail. And then the silence shifts. Beneath the dripping, a new sound stirs. Faint, low, like the moan of a chain deep below. Perhaps it is imagination. Perhaps it is water moving against stone. But it feels like a voice, a warning carried upward. The ruin breathes again, drawing us deeper. We rise from the moat's edge, the damp air clinging to our cloaks, the torch's flame shivering. The dripping continues behind us, its rhythm eternal, its song unending. Ahead, the passage narrows into darker shadow, carved steps slick with centuries of water. The moat has shown us reflection, has shown us duty submerged. But beyond lies something deeper, where silence grows thicker, where memory descends into burial. We leave the key to its grave. We leave the water to its song. The ruin waits, whispering through the dripping that the story is not finished. Beyond the moat lies another threshold, another secret, another descent into the heart of abandonment. And so we go forward, carrying the echo of water in our ears, its rhythm beating like a heart that will not die. The night gathers thick around the ruin, its silence broken only by the whisper of wind through hollow windows. Above, the towers lean like weary sentinels, their jagged crowns outlined against a pale and watchful moon. Below, a chamber yawns open, a crypt, a hidden sanctum, a place where even memory speaks in hushed tones. We have passed the feasting halls and the dripping moat. Now the ruin leads us into its final breath, where stone and shadow hold the most guarded of its secrets. The air here is heavy with the scent of soil and old wax. The walls are close, pressing inward, their surfaces carved with faint lines that once bore meaning. Prayers etched in Latin, tally marks scratched by desperate hands, symbols too faint to fully decipher. The torchlight trembles, and each flicker breathes life into the carvings, as though they shift and whisper when the eye looks away. Silence reigns, but it is not empty. It is the silence of breath held, of secrets buried, of oaths never spoken aloud. A stair of worn stone curls downward into deeper dark. Each step bears the indentation of countless feet, yet no one walks here now. Dust lies thick, but beneath it, faint smears of soot and wax suggest the tread of candles carried long ago. At the stair's end, the chamber opens. Its roof curves into an arch, low but enduring, its stones slick with damp. And there, upon a crude altar of unpolished rock, lies the faint outline of relics abandoned. A fragment of wood, its edges scorched. A scrap of cloth, brittle as paper. An iron cross, bent and blackened. These are not treasures, but fragments. They are the bones of belief. The imagination calls forth the figures who gathered here. Men with cloaks drawn tight, their faces gaunt with hunger, their eyes lit by wavering flame. They whispered prayers too dangerous to utter in the halls above. They shared bread broken thin, wine poured sparingly, their communion both sacred and desperate. In this chamber, the ruin tells us, faith survived not in splendor, but in secrecy. The walls themselves absorbed their murmurs, storing them like echoes in a tomb. And yet there is unease. The ruin does not give peace freely. These walls also witnessed betrayal. Perhaps it was here a brother's name was spoken in accusation, whispered to the torchlight, carried upward into judgment. Perhaps it was here confessions were drawn from trembling lips, sins forced into words while the eyes of comrades turned away. The ruin does not judge, but it remembers. The silence here tastes of guilt as much as devotion. At the chamber's far wall lies a door of stone, smaller than the others, its lintel carved with a crude symbol, a circle, pierced by a line. Its surface is stained with soot, as though fire once licked its frame. Beyond it, darkness coils thick, impenetrable. Was it a burial chamber? Was it storage for relics too precious or too cursed to be kept above? Or was it the prison of a secret, locked away from history's gaze? The ruin does not answer. It merely holds the door, waiting, daring us to cross. The torch gutters, smoke curling like incense, and in its dimming light the relics seem to breathe. The iron cross bends closer. The scrap of cloth shifts as though stirred by unseen wind. The fragment of wood glows faintly with memory of flame. They are not alive, yet they speak. They tell of men who clung to faith when stone collapsed, when banners burned, when crowns crumbled into soil. They tell of the cost of devotion, hunger, exile, silence, death. They tell us that to believe in a world crumbling is to carve hope into the marrow of stone itself. The ruin exhales, and with it comes a sound, low, mournful, like a voice half buried in centuries of dust. It is not a scream, not a chant, but a sigh, the last breath of a place that once held more life than it could bear. The sigh fills the chamber, pressing against our chest, curling into our ears. It asks no question. It demands no answer. It simply lingers, heavy as the earth above. We lift the torch toward the small stone door. Its surface glistens with damp, its edges crumbling slightly beneath the years. To open it would be to disturb the deepest of the ruin's secrets. To leave it closed is to let silence reign. The ruin does not insist. It waits. It has waited centuries. It can wait more. Yet the invitation is clear. Beyond this threshold lies the heart of abandonment, the secret that the ruin itself guards with all its weight. The torch sputters, its flame thinning, and shadows crowd close. The relics fade into obscurity, the carvings on the wall dissolve into stone, the sigh subsides into silence. And yet the sense of presence does not vanish. It grows heavier, as though unseen eyes watch from the darkness, as though the ruin itself has become sentient, aware of our intrusion. We are no longer witnesses alone. We are participants. We have stepped into a story that has not ended. Above, the wind howls through broken towers. The raven cries again, circling in the night. The ruin stirs, its heartbeat echoing in the dripping of the moat, in the collapse of the hall, in the silence of this crypt. The story has carried us through exile, through devotion, through secrecy, through betrayal. It now brings us to the edge of revelation, though what waits beyond may never be spoken. We stand before the stone door, hand pressed against its cold surface, dust clinging to our skin. Behind us lies the path we have taken, feasts abandoned, banners rotted, prayers whispered into void. Before us lies only shadow. The ruin has brought us here, to its deepest breath, its final silence. And though the torch dies, though the darkness swallows all, the story does not end. It carries onward, into shadow, into memory, into the unending silence of stone that still remembers.